I want to introduce myself. I want to thank you guys for coming today. They had asked me to do some talking to new coaches. Are all of you here new coaches? Does that mean that this is your first year that you're coaching a team? Has anybody done more than two? Second year? Okay. Any more than 2 years? Anybody do 3 or more? Okay. I think a couple of years ago, I sat in the new coaches training because I feel like anytime you have an opportunity to listen to somebody who is going to help you think about the coach's responsibility, all those things in a different way, it's definitely an advantage. If somebody has some extra little thing to add that you haven't thought about, then those are the kinds of things that we want to make sure that we can always glean. So just introduce myself. My name is Kevin Rudzinski. I teach middle school math and science and STEM at St. Paul's Lutheran School on the corner of Dallas and Manchester. And so I was just explaining to a gentleman in the back that we have a big building project right now at our school, so we're kind of limited in some of our spaces. We don't have a gymnasium right now or a cafeteria, so that's interesting. But so the name of our program, we've named it SpotX, which we call that SpotX because it's St. Paul's Robotics. And so that's what we have here. I have had the blessing and the honor of being able to be in charge of the program for the last 8 years. It says here 9 years. I did teach, I did assistant coach one team in Iowa. It was in 2012. And my daughter was in 6th grade at that time. She's currently and no longer at home. So, and I have also been in charge of, but I've only really been directly connected to coaching 12 of them. We have 3 teams this year. At our school, we have a 5th grade team, and that's the one I'm coaching this year. We have a 6th grade team, so I have another coach that's doing that one, and an assistant. And then we have a 7th and 8th grade combined team, and we have a couple coaches for that one as well. So part of running that program, I'm always recruiting volunteer parents or people who are interested in reaching out and serving these kids and helping them think and critically think and design as much as you possibly can. So that's what our program is. I just want you to know where we come from. Last year, our 8th grade team, and we're in the shirt from last year, the Spiddly Diddly SpotX, we were able to travel to California to compete postseason in May, and that was pretty exciting for that group. And the year before that, we had one team who took 2nd in the state of Missouri, and we were able to go to the world competition, the World Festival in Houston. And then we had another team that was invited to go to Arkansas for the Razorback Invitation. So I've had over the last 2 years a really cool experience giving some of my teams the experience of not just competing in the qualifier, competing in the state, but also competing beyond state in something else. And so having that experience, I think that's why they asked me to talk. I don't know if I'm going to be able to give you all of the things that we do that will make sense for you guys, but definitely at the end we'll give you opportunity for some Q&A. So I want to just make sure that we understand a couple things here. So if you're kind of new, that's why I asked where you guys in terms of your experiences. I want to make sure that you understand what this is all about. The robot game, the project, and the core values, those are the 3 areas we see here, right? And they all kind of work together. This is an icon. You can look at this image on the Google. If you Google this, the 3 parts of First Lego League, you're going to find this image. And they all work together in this triangle because they're all integrated into one another. This year, our theme is submerged, right? So you're going to do a lot of research in areas that are involved in underwater exploration or issues with the ocean. I think that the one thing that you want to think about when you're putting together project ideas and helping your team with those project ideas, it needs to be connected to the ocean. Okay, so one of the things that we kind of joked about with my coaches was that most of us don't deal with issues with underwater exploration on a daily basis. I mean, when was the last time you had a real daily problem with your underwater exploration challenges, right? So that's not something we can relate to here in the Midwest as easily and directly, but maybe we travel to the ocean, or we can research some of the things that the ocean does for us, or some of the things that are challenges within the health of the ocean. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But then the third part of it is all about core values. And they always say that's the part, that's how we do things. So what we do is we program a robot, we design a robot, we do research, and we present a solution for the project. But then the way we do it is core values. And that sometimes seems a little bit nebulous because, well, what does that mean? Well, there are 6 core values, right? You can see that in your coach's meeting guide. And I would absolutely go through each one of those with your students and make sure that your team members understand what they are. One of the things that I always do is I make sure that the kids, the team members, explore those, and then somewhere along the first month or so, I have them decide which is their most, the one that is their favorite. What's their favorite core value? It used to be years ago when they went into the presentations, they would ask them, "What's your favorite core value?" And the kids would look at each other, and I'd have 6 or 7 or 8 kids on a team, and you have like 4 different answers, and that cohesion wasn't there, right? So I always make sure that they understand what those core values are. They understand what they're going to look like within the team and the day-to-day, but then also I want them to choose one that's their favorite. And we go as far as putting it on the back of our shirts. We always make sure that that favorite one is listed on the back of our shirts, so that if they were to be asked that question, I tell them, your favorite one you chose is on the back of your shirt. Just look at your neighbor and you'll be able to answer that one. So it's just making it a big part of who they are when we talk about core values. So I think that's a big part of it. I'll tell you a little experience later on when we get to some other core value things in teamwork that I just had this last week. So teams are going to be judged in 4 areas. So I say that there is 3 parts, but there's actually 4 parts. I tell my students you have 4 parts. You are going to program and design a robot to navigate and solve problems on the field. Okay, and so there's a total number of points that's possible. And one thing I would say, don't worry about solving all of them. Okay, when you get to the higher levels, there are going to be teams. There's teams that we competed with in the last 2 years who literally solved everything on the field, to the point that 2 years ago when we were at the World Festival, the top 2 teams actually had a playoff because both of them had 3 perfect rounds. They literally scored every point that was possible 3 times in a row. And so then their head-to-head was, now it's about, if you're going to do it again, it's who can do it faster. So now it's about time, right? Now, what was interesting in that playoff at head-to-head, they didn't actually, neither one of them actually had a perfect round. So that was not a big deal. But the thing is, that I think is getting to be, maybe it's a challenge this year. I was looking at the challenges that are out there. Don't worry about doing all of them. They actually design them sometimes so that you really can't do them very easily. But I'm not going to say can't, because in First Lego League, can't usually means challenge accepted, right? So, I think the big thing with a new coach is going in and helping your team members understand what they need to do to begin. So we're gonna say, you're gonna see us up here, start small, okay? And then we have robot design. Like, how do you design that robot? You can look at a couple different things. One year I had 2 teams that literally took the competition ready robot out of the Spike Prime kit, looked at the directions on how to build it, and then they just modified attachments for that. You have a gearbox in the front and a gearbox on the back, and you've got basically a kind of a border of Lego pieces that keep it from the wheels getting caught on things, and it's great. And if you don't know where to start, that's a great place to start. However, it's kind of big, and so what we've decided to do in some of our teams is we like to start simple. Okay, so the way that I usually go into robot design is I give the kids the hub, I give the kids 2 motors, and I give them 2 wheels, and I say, build a robot. And they have to figure out how to put it together, right? Then what we do is we get them to start moving to the first challenge, right? And then when we get to that challenge, that first mission, then we talk about, what do you need to add to your robot to do that, okay? So some of what we've started to do is we try to simplify it down, because the kids can get really good at complicating things. If you can solve it by adding one piece, they're going to want to add 15. And all of a sudden, you get this big, bulky thing that isn't really necessary. Okay, so one of the things that one of my coaches uses, he's a computer programmer, and he uses the acronym YAGNI. You ain't gonna need it. So sometimes you could ask that question. Okay, cool, that works really well. Now can you do the same thing simpler? Go. And we challenge them to be able to solve the same thing in a simpler way, so that you're not adding all this extra bulk that kind of gets in the way of things. So that's one suggestion. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a minute. Okay, yeah, I'm going to get to that in a minute, and then I'll give you. It is true. These robots, we always talk about it this way. The robots are plastic, and they're made out of plastic stuff, and there's some electronics on the inside, which I've never taken it apart, so I don't know what they really look like on the inside. But they're plastic, going to work sometimes, and then sometimes they're like, wait a minute, it worked like 3 times in a row. Why is this other one like so far off? I'll talk to you about that in a bit. That's coming. All right, and then the project is the presentation. What they've shifted to, and what you need to be able to help your students do, your team members do, is that they're going to have a 30-minute presentation. It used to be these little 10 to 15-minute presentations that they would go to these different meeting rooms throughout the competition day. Now they do it in one shot. So when they're in there, they present one, they have a little Q&A, and then they present the second part. Okay, they start with the project, the Q&A, then they do the second one, they do the robot design, and then the Q&A, and then they ask them some questions about their core values, how they use core values throughout the season. So that's what your 30-minute is broken up into, your 30-minute presentation is broken up into. And so we always want to be able to talk about those things, okay? Let me get into a couple other things. The thing that I would say that is ridiculously important as a new coach or even experienced coach, you need to know the rubrics, okay? A rubric is the way that the team is going to be judged. These are the forms that you can go to the First Lego League official website. There's a whole bunch of links, and you get down towards the bottom, and it's going to show you the judging rubrics. These I didn't actually look to see if they were in the printed materials that come with your kit. Did anybody find those in the back of the kit this year? Okay, last year they were in the back, and you could just literally make copies of them. And I would make several copies. You can get them in color, you can get them in black and white. It doesn't matter how you want to print them. But these questions that are in here, these are the things that the judges are looking for. Okay, so what I would absolutely do is make sure that you have those in the beginning, and I would probably start some of your first meetings having a conversation with your team about what these are. These are our goals. These are the things that you're going to be evaluated. It's just like anything else. If you're going to be evaluated at work, you want to know what you're being evaluated on, right? And you're going to then work in those areas to be able to meet the expectations of your boss or your evaluators. Well, that's what we want to help them do too. Okay, so there's several different areas along the way. Minimal evidence of mission strategy, partial evidence of mission strategy, clear evidence of mission strategy. Now here's the thing, if you get a 3, you've done it all. Understand that. It's 1 through 4. If you get a 3, you've done it all. They've seen evidence, you've done it, it's clear, it's great. If you get a 4, you've shown that you've exceeded the expectations. So 4s are really rare. So keep that in mind. If you're getting 3s, 3s are fantastic. If you're getting straight 3s, 3s are fantastic. This team, the Spiddly Day Spotix last year in the qualifier, we got mostly 3s. I don't think we had any 2s. We had 3s, we had some 4s. So when we went into trying to make it better for state, we had to look at those and say, okay, now that they gave you a 3, how can you make it even better? How can you go over the top, right? You're going to get these back through the hub. There'll be a hub that you're going to get to. Unfortunately, those just aren't very printable. So what I ended up doing is once we had those, I opened up the hub for my students to see, and I had one student who translated those things into a Google document that then they could then brainstorm and think, how can we make improvements in this area? And then they would put down some of that information. That became fuel for our new goals. Okay. So, but I would definitely make sure you study the rubrics and have the team study the rubrics. They need to understand what it is that they are going to be judged on. Okay. So that's very important. You are responsible for the timing. Okay. I don't know what age level you have. My current team that I'm coaching this year is a fifth grade group. I have all fifth graders. I have 7 fifth graders. They have 0 experience. So I am an experienced coach with an inexperienced team, and they don't know how to communicate right now. Right? And they're not really in a place where they can understand what it is they have to do. That's our job. Okay, we get to give them those assignments. We get to give them the tasks for the day. So as a coach, you're in charge of the timing. The work of the team will take time. Understand your timeline is between now and December or January, right? So you have to have everything ready by December or January. It depends on which qualifier you're going to sign up to participate in. So a couple of things in the project. I want to start with the project. We'll get into some of the other parts, but we want to find a solution to the problem. Now, like I said, it is very, very, very difficult, I think, for the kids to say, oh, these are the challenges that we have in underwater exploration, because none of us have had that experience. We can't really relate to that very easily. So we have to find a way to make it relatable, right? So you might have to do some brainstorming with the kids. What are some of the things that you know about the ocean? What are some of the things that you know? And maybe you might even have to give them some things to think about, like, let's do some research. Okay, if they don't come up with much in the brainstorming session, then maybe what we need to do is we need to give them some experiences where they can start thinking of those things. So design some experiences or field trips. Going to the aquarium. I have my 6th grade team is going to the aquarium this month, and they're going to go to the aquarium. They're going to read all the different placards and things that are in there, and they're going to try to find out as much as they can about organisms living in the water and what are some of the things that are related to their challenges for health and ecosystems, environmental cleanliness, and things like that. Also, maybe trying to find some sort of in-person or virtual meeting with an expert. Probably virtual is going to make sense. There may be organization here in the Midwest or even in St. Louis where you can talk to an expert that works with restoration, okay, coral reef restoration, or maybe one of the ideas that you come up with has to do with exploring the issue of plastics in the ocean. I don't know if you guys have learned about microplastics. The idea is that these are all things that have to do with the ocean. So definitely open it up. It's very, very broad. Help the students to brainstorm some of those things. And then once you have a few of them, have them kind of think about, maybe do a little bit of research. Go back to that scientific method a little bit, right? Do a little bit of research with them. And if they're young and they don't know how to do that, you might have to load up some websites. You might load up some websites for them and then give them some of these things to look at, and then read or print off some of the things that are on those pages and have them highlight. What are some important things you read in these paragraphs? What have we learned? And have that discussion. Populate something on a screen or on a board. Right? Help them understand. And then once we have researched some of that, and maybe it doesn't lead to the exact thing that they're thinking about right away, then you might have to think, okay, these are our top things. You might need to, depending on the age level that you have, you might need to think of a variety of possible areas that you can kind of push them into. Now, again, I say that because you are not supposed to decide their project. But I do think it's realistic to say that very young students don't very easily show up at understanding what a problem is and then come up with a solution. You might have to lead them there by giving them information. So like I said, the timing is yours, but we want to make sure, like last year I didn't have to worry about it. My team members, they were 8th graders. They came up with it. The year before that same group came up with it. In fact, I was prepared. I was standing in front of them. I had 3 things I had researched. I was going to put them on the board, have them research, and then one kid goes, hey, I've been researching something. Can I talk about that? I said, oh, before I talk, yeah, go. Because remember, kids do the work, right? So he started talking, and I said, that is a really cool thing. I think we need to research that. And then he said, so what were your ideas? I said, I don't have any ideas. I said, you just came up with a really cool idea. I think we need to look at that right away. And what they ended up doing was they ended up taking that idea and moving forward with it. Okay, and it really kind of changed over time. So you just have to what you have to do is you have to sometimes be a little preemptive, because I'm going to tell you, if you tell them to open up a computer, or you tell them to do a little bit of work on their own, and there's no direction, I think majority of the 6th, 7th, 8th graders, maybe 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, if anybody has 4th graders, it's going to be hard for them to come up with that on their own in the area that you're wanting them to. So, give them some resources to look at, kind of direct their study of something, and then from that, they might have some ideas that, oh, I noticed that this seems to be a problem. Okay, cool. How do you think we might be able to solve it? Oh, that's going to be authentic for them. They're not going to be limited to laws of nature and materials and costs. They don't care about any of that stuff. They're going to have this really cool idea. In fact, one year I had a team. This was Cargo Connect. The real 8th grader, he wanted to deliver packages. The solution for a package delivery system was that he wanted to create some sort of wormhole that you can throw the package into, and then it would end up in your house. It's like, I don't think that kind of technology works. I don't think the laws of nature work that way, but that's a really cool, creative way to do it. Then they wanted to slingshot him through the air so that they would be caught in a net above the house. I was like, well, that's really cool, but let's think now, what's that going to look like, right? And so we start thinking about things, and then all of a sudden they start thinking about the size of packages. They start thinking about the weight of packages, and what's that going to take to be able to do that, right? So we have to have those conversations, and then all of a sudden they start bringing things in a little bit. But like I said, they're going to think outside the box. One of my favorite examples that was very successful was a couple years ago. My students created, they actually had a solution for electricity, subsidized electricity in the building, and they designed an actual working tile that when you step on it, it generates electricity. And that's pretty cool. Imagine all these 4 tiles. Every time you step down on it, you have a little bit of electricity that goes into a battery, right? So the idea is that they thought of that. I didn't think of that. And they get the idea for some places that they research. So the research, depending on age, you might have to guide that. Okay, so I'm trying to make that kind of clear for you guys. But again, they do the work, right? So it takes some time to get there. So you are in charge of the timing. Watch your timing. I would say between now and probably November, you need to be probably now and beginning of November. You probably need to land on a project that's good. Okay, that's probably a good timeline. So when it comes to the presentation, I recommend you use a script. Have the kids write their own script. We like to do a little hook in the beginning, a little fun, almost skit that takes maybe 30 seconds to kind of something that the kids they write all of it, right? And then we might just kind of think about, okay, what's the problem? We want to establish the problem. Go back to the rubric. Establish the problem. Establish the solution, right? We always want to know the cost, right? We want to know there's a number of different things along the way that you want to be able to present. And you want to make sure that you have some sort of a model or prototype. Okay, so that model or prototype could be a computer. There's a number of teams that come in with computers and they project something and they show a video. I've seen a lot of virtual reality sorts of solutions that different teams have used. Our teams have not done it that way, but definitely having a model or some sort of a prototype to show. So like I said, designing a working thing. So those kinds of things are very useful. And then also think about your props, okay? Generally, the kids need to be able to manage their own props, okay? So you want them to walk into the room with those. If they're really large and you've got younger kids, they usually allow the coach to come in and set it down. Can't talk, they just set it down, and then they go sit in the back. And then the kids kind of manipulate the props if it's a large thing. But we usually have our posters and signs and things like that that have some of the information that we're talking about as a visual. So I would always say have some sort of a poster, some sort of a visual in your presentations. That really helps. Okay, so time management is that one. Day-to-day planning. Okay, so I think it's useful to have a goal for each meeting. Figure out what you want to accomplish in this meeting. I'm going to guarantee that you're not going to hit those goals most of the time. But I think if you have that goal, you can make adjustments for the next one. But you do need to have a goal for each meeting. Schedule field trips and experts ahead of time. Tell the kids, you know what? Make sure that you're at this meeting, because I don't call them practices, I call them meetings. At this meeting, because we're going to have this expert coming in and talking to us. Or we're going to do a Zoom call with this person who's in this area of the country, whatever. So I want you to be there. And so that way we schedule that and they know that. If it's a field trip, you might need to schedule that early so that you have parents to help drive the students to those locations. We had one year where Diode Dynamics, they're on the back of our shirt here, Diode Dynamics was one of our sponsors, and we got to go to their facility. And not only did we get a tour of their facility, that was really cool, but we also got to meet with 12, that was kind of cool, 12 of their engineers sat in a room and listened to our kids. It was one of those things where the owner said, I'm gonna just put it out there, anybody who wants to stay after work, talk with you guys, it's up to them. I'm not going to force them to, because I'm not going to pay them to do it. And 12 of them volunteered to stay afterwards to talk to our kids. Talk to experts. See what you can find out in whatever area you're working in, and see how many people want to show up. Also, when it comes to experts, think about anybody within your community. Maybe you know people. Like this year, Smurs, one of my assistant coach, he worked with the Navy. So he's going to talk to some of his friends that spent time on a submarine, right? So just learning some of the things that are challenging there. So kind of think about where you can reach out. Usually what I find is that every season, doesn't matter what the topic, there's going to be somebody within your community, your circle of friends, or people you know who know people that might know somebody that can help you guys out. Okay, and most of the time, professionals want to talk and help kids who are trying to change the world, right? And that's how we kind of do it. Now, depending on age, it says have the team determine the task. So last year, what I would do with my 8th graders, because they were 8th graders and they've been through this for a while, I would sit down and say, okay, what's our job today? What do we have to take care of? And so one of the kids would go up to the whiteboard, and the kids would start throwing things out. And then I would, if there was something I knew that didn't get on the list that I knew had to get accomplished, I would say, has anybody been working on this? How are we doing on this thing? Okay, how's the script going? Do we need to edit it? Does anybody need? Are we at a place where one of the coaches can look at it and read it now? How are the presentation boards coming? When we do the qualifier, we usually make a presentation board on a trifold. Just go to Office Max or whatever and get a trifold. When we go to state, we usually get them printed. We create something in either Canva or Google Slides, and then we print them as 24 by 36, and we get them printed at that point. Now that's an extra cost, kind of think that through, but we make them a little bit more professional. First competition, if we make it to state. Second competition, we want to make it better. We want to make those presentations better. And then last year we even did a third one. We did a third presentation style when we got to travel. Okay, so that's really cool when you get to travel. So assign the members. What we did was like, okay, so we've got a list of 6 things. Who's going to work on this today? And the kids would raise their hand, and if you don't have it, maybe you decide, depending on the age. Okay, I want you 2 to be working on this part today. Okay, you 2 are going to be working on mission number 2 on the robot. So you're going to have the first 30 minutes or first 40 minutes to be working on the robots today. I want you 2 to be working on the presentation boards. I need you 2 to be working on the script. I need you 2 to be working on and some of the things that we also like to do is have things to give out. We always want to give things out when we're in competitions. Those are fun. Have the kids think of that, right? So last year we 3D printed little keychains. The kids designed a 3D print thing that said "Spiddly Diddly." Actually, it said "Have a Spiddly Diddly Day," and they made keychains, and we 3D printed those, and they created it, and they would come in, and I had one student who I trained on how to use the 3D printers, and he just used them. He constantly was printing, and we made like 600 of these little things, and then they would put them together, and it's just a matter of like, okay, do we need to print any more of those things? All right, you can get that started. And so depending on your age, those are the kinds of things that you can be doing. When we went to California, there was a team that they 3D printed, I wish I would have brought it with me. They're little tools that you can use to pull really difficult to remove parts out of Lego pieces. And they had hundreds of them, and they would just walk around handing them to people. But they designed them, they printed them, and that was it was a practical handout, right? It wasn't just it wasn't just a keychain or a sticker or a button that you're going to collect and then what are you going to do with it later, right? It was literally something that's a tool that's going to end up being in our toolbox as we go, and that's kind of a cool thing. So kind of have the kids think about it. Sometimes there's candy that you can give out. Sometimes you have to print a label for it. What message do you want to get? Those are all things that you can throw into this. So kind of summarize a few things. There's always the robot mission. There's always the robot design and figuring out some of the attachments, things like that. I'll get to that here in a minute. There's always the robot missions and programming. There's always the research and the writing. There's always the presentation materials. But then there's also, we call it swag. What swag do you want your team to hand out at competitions? Sometimes what they do is they give you, teams have given us little cards or something that wish us, good luck today from this team. And it might have some candy attached to it or something, right? So it's just a matter of like, how does your team, and that's all part of the core values. It's encouraging other teams to do their best so that when you're competing, everybody's doing their best. That's kind of a cool thing because if you end up on top, you know that you're encouraging everybody to do your very best and you got to do your very best and this time you won, right? And if you don't, you just know that everybody did their very best. All right, so that's that part. So the robot game, this comes in your planning packet. I would definitely make a copy of that when you get it, make several copies of that, and have the kids sketch out a direction that they want to, maybe even number. There's a number of ways you can use this. You can number the mission models in terms of the ones you want to accomplish first, second, third, fourth, fifth. You could also then kind of create I'm going to start here on this side or start here on this side. I'm going to move over here, go there, and then come back. And then maybe in another color, and have them plan out what that's going to look like. Now, I've tried this over the years, and students have started there, and then realistically, they kind of modify things as they go, and they don't record it very well, and you constantly have to be on them. Can you record that new decision you just made? We want to keep record of that new decision. Be mindful of that, because they're going to get into it, and they're going to make adjustments, and they're going to go into it and make adjustments, and it's just going to be a very kind of a rapid sort of thing, and kids don't generally want to record things. So one of the things that I did last year was I had 2 kids on my Daily Spotics team. I said, you two, you're writers. You're organized. I actually recruited them because they were girls and they were writers and they were organized. I didn't have a lot of girls on my team before that, and so I recruited 3 girls last year, and that really helped my team because girls and boys are not the same. And these girls were inspiring. They were organized. They were methodical, they were meticulous, and they were open to learning new things. The boys, all they want to do is play with the robot. I say that, but actually they were pretty good writers too. But anyway, doing that sort of thing here helps you plan. Okay, well, let's start with this one. You can always scrap it, okay, and do another one. These are easy to print off. But explore the missions. One of the things I brought this in, one of the things we like to do in the very beginning is we use what's called a finger robot. Okay, if you don't know what that means, if you look at the video that's available, it shows you how you interact with every one of them. The missions, they're always having a finger and they're pushing the yellow lever or whatever. It's always a finger that moves it, right? I have the kids go through all of that because they need to understand, is it a push? Is it a pull? Is it a lift? Are you pushing down? Do you slide it left or right? This year there's one that rotates. I think it's important to know how those move because if the kids can see what motion they're doing to get the mission solved with their finger, then they can think, okay, what do I need to have the robot do? I had one kid say, oh, this is going to be easy because I have to just move it around like this. I said, cool. How's the robot going to do that? Show me. Show me what the attachment's going to look like to get the robot to get it to do this, right? And they said, well, you could just put a motor, and then all of a sudden they go, okay, it's going to take some thinking, isn't it? That's not going to be as simple as just lifting, Sometimes, like last year, a lot of them were just pushes and pulls. But there's also ways you don't always have to solve the problem by hitting the thing that's the yellow bar. How many of you did? Was a coach? How many of you were coaches last year? Okay, so the thing in the middle, that was the, I forget what's it called, the lights, right? The light show. At the higher levels, we had a lot of teams that came in there, and they created like a funnel. I call it a funnel with Lego pieces that would come in, always line up perfectly, and then they had a gear that literally turned the gear to get the thing to go up. Never interacted one bit with the things that the piece designed. The idea with that is think outside the box. How else could you, maybe ask, how else could that be solved? How else can you get it that way? Can you get it from here to there, right? What are the other ways of thinking about it? Help them think about it. Sometimes simple is simple. Sometimes the way that it's designed could be more complicated in terms of the attachments. So thinking about that design, that's why I say start small. You start with the finger. Sometimes I give them one of these Legos. It's okay, now this is your attachment. What can you solve with just this? Okay. Then you can add something to it, right? Maybe you need a little hook on the end or something. So you can have them kind of think that relatively young. Higher levels, there are teams that they have a lot of complex robots and complex attachments. We've never been able to match that. Some of the things that I saw at some of the higher levels, you can probably Google them. They're pretty sophisticated, and don't feel like you have to do that. That sophisticated attachment setup and a huge box robot, don't feel like you have to do that. That's going to wear you out, and then you're going to understand what you're doing. So that's why I say start small. Give them a hub. Give them two motors and 2 wheels. And then the question is, well, you want to use those wheels. If you have an expansion kit along with the regular kit, they have bigger wheels. Do you want to use the smaller wheels or bigger wheels? Why? Do you want to use thicker wheels or thinner wheels? Why? Have them do some experiments with them, right? Put the wheels on, have them move it. Put the other wheels on, have them move it. And which one is more precise? Which one is faster? Which one is more reliable? Which one leaves you with more error in your program? And if they do some experiments with those, then they're going to make a decision as to which wheel. I don't know how many times we were asked in judging, why did you use those wheels? And honestly, some of the honest responses some of my team gave, we liked them. That's not a real great engineering reason for doing it, right? But they did it because they liked them. They looked cool, right? But we want to make sure that we are programming and designing for accuracy best we possibly can. And so you bring up that point of it not being very consistent. So last year we had an issue. Inside your robot hub is an internal gyro sensor. I would definitely do some Google searches and find out how to program to use your internal gyro sensor. That's useful. That's a sensor you don't have to add to it. That's already there. And there are several different programs that you can find online that people will show you how to use them. Then you just have to modify those blocks for your particular robot design. We did that last year. We went to our first competition, and they asked us, "What are you using for your sensor? Are you using a gyro sensor?" We said, "No." They said no. I didn't see it. I was watching. And they said, "I suggest you do that." So the next meeting, we came back after qualifier, and I said, "All right, you guys, put some tape on the table." And I set the robot down so that one end was against the tape, and I said, "Make it turn 90 degrees, go." And I said, "Okay, use your gyro sensor and make it turn 90 degrees." Now, my programmers that I had last year were really good. And within 20 minutes, they created a program that would make it go 90 degrees. And I said, "Cool." Now, I put a random angle on it, and I said, "Now I want you to match this angle." They said, "Well, what angle is it?" I said, "I don't know." And I said, "How are you going to find out?" And I use a protractor? Protractor right over there, go get it. So we measured, it was 47 degrees. And I said, "Cool, make it turn 47 degrees, go." And so within 20 minutes they had this done. Now I think that's unique. I don't think that every team is going to have students that can do that, but there are Google searches where you can create a little short stack of program code that makes that work. Well, what they did was once they made that, they explored the idea of making what's called my blocks. So my blocks are where you're going to go into a programming. I would go to the programming session here. That's going to be later this morning or later this afternoon. And what you do is you create a code block and you give it a name, and then later on you just put that little code block in there and it runs that. It runs that whole thing. So we actually integrated that true turn, that accurate turn programming block into most of what every time we made a turn, we could tell it to go so far, and it was very accurate. Now we also noticed something else happened, and it was sometimes the two wheels are moving at different rates, even though they're supposed to be moving at the same rate, and so your robot tends to do this, or it tends to do this. So I said, if we can make a program, you guys, that can make sure you turn exactly 47 degrees or 97 degrees or 120 degrees or whatever you want to be turning, you surely can make one that's going to be able to take in information about the rotations of your wheels and then make an adjustment so that it constantly goes straight. So I did a little Google search, and actually my student sitting right next to me, he did a Google search, and I said, build what they show you here and then modify it as needed. So he built the program code according to what he saw. He had to make some adjustments because our robot always ran backwards. So he had to make some adjustments. And what was kind of cool is as it would move forward, we would hit the back end of the robot to make it go off course, and it would always come right back. Okay, so we call that they actually called it the drive good. That's my 8th graders in their accurate grammar. The drive good program. But that was the drive straight program that we created based on that research. So again, what I put in here is always learn new and better ways to program. That's going to be a journey that you're going to take with your team, and every year you get to build on it. Now, one of the things that I think works really well for my program is what my students did last year. We get to share that with our teams. So you guys, we have an issue with this. Here's some program code that one of our previous teams created, right? That's what we have. See if any of this works. Let's put this into our program and see if that helps. Keep track of the things that your teams are creating and the research that you're doing, because you can be using those from year to year. And I think that's going to be really helpful, because if you want your program, your team to continue to get better, they should be better next year than this year. And they should be better the third year after that, right? Because you're able to build on top of those successes. So I think that's helpful. All right. Build teamwork. One of the things that's very important, I think this is my last slide. Learn about the members of your team. You got to find out who they are, how they tick. I had a meeting with my 5th graders the other day, and I got one student who, man, he likes to touch everything and take it out of everybody's hands. I'm sure you don't have anybody like that on your teams. We've got another kid who likes to just talk over everybody. I'm sure you don't have anybody like that on your teams either. That's normal. We've got to learn how to do that. So I had one girl who was sitting there, and she was very, very wise 5th grader, and she said, we need to talk. I said, cool idea. I said, we do need a talking stick, because I keep telling you guys that you're talking over each other. At one point, one kid was asking me a question or commenting to everybody, and 3 others were talking to each other. But oddly enough, all 3 of them were talking at the same time. And I said, we need to have some rules and some ground rules how we do this. So she said, talking stick. I said, I love it. I said, so we moved over to a table. I pulled out the Lego box. I said, you got 10 minutes, build a Lego stick, or build a talking stick. And together they had to work, again, building that team approach, right? This is going to be their rule. This is how we know that it's our time to talk when we're holding the talking stick. If you don't hold a talking stick, I mean, it's your rule, right? You're not allowed to talk. If you want it, then we have to have a procedure. So we have this talk. Actually, they created a talking cart. It really got out of hand. It took 35 minutes. But the thing is, we want to find out a little bit more how they tick, right? What kind of learners are they? Which ones know how to write? Which ones are excited about programming? Which ones are not? I've got a girl on my team who does not want to ever do any programming. But she wants to do a ton of, she goes, but I'm really excited about the research and the writing. I said, cool. I said, but you're still going to have to learn how to program. She goes, okay. And I have other kids like, oh, we have to write. Yep, we have to write some things. So the thing is, what I say is like, use interest to divide the work. Last year, my daughter was on this team. She led most of the writing. That's what she loved to do. She loved the research and the writing and the presentation stuff. Did I make her get on the robot and get on the programming and on the table? Yes, because they have to all have that experience. So what we try to do is we try to pair kids up and have those kids working on a mission. So instead of having 2 kids doing all of the missions, if you have, let's say you have 6 kids, put them in groups of 2, and then separate your tasks into 3 parts. And then they each do that. They each do their parts. And then when they're in their presentation, they say, who did all of the work? They say, we all did it. We shared it. Are you sure you did? Yeah, we all shared it. How did you do that? Well, we separated into small teams of 2, and we decided which missions we were interested in doing, and then we programmed those kinds of things. Now, everybody gets to give input and help things get better and more efficient, but the same thing with writing. We write the scripts, and then you have the other kids read them, and if something doesn't make sense, you have a meeting. Okay, what did you notice? Is there anything that we're missing? Is there anything that's redundant? Right? So let it be a team approach. But again, you're a facilitator this whole time, and sometimes a delegator, right? If you have older students, then they might be able to delegate. This was a team. This girl here, I recruited her last year, and she was a delegator. This guy here, believe it or not, he was kind of our jack of all trades. He loved to write. He was very good at it. He was very creative, and he got involved in the robot. But honestly, he was able to go wherever he wanted. He didn't care. He was my engineer. Okay, this guy was my engineer, and he engineered things. So that was really kind of fun. So anyway, that's maybe all that I have prepared. I have about 10 minutes left for Q&A. I don't know if I can answer all of them, but I'll do my very best to answer anything that you ask. Did I answer your question about the veering off thing enough? That yeah. So there are. I would say that when I look at the tutorial on how to use a gyro sensor that comes with kit, like that stuff, I've never gotten that to be real successful. So I've used it, and it does some weird stuff. It's not as wonky as the EV3s were. The EV3s would hardly ever work for us, and so these work pretty well. So what I would do is, here's what I'm gonna also say with this. When I say it goes 47, okay, that's on average. If I wanted to go 47 degrees, sometimes it was 43. Sometimes it was 49. It was mostly around 47. And the reason I say that, it does make a difference. I mean, if you're going to make a turn with your gyro sensor, and then you're going to go 7 rotations that way, if you're off 2 degrees, you can be off 4 inches up there, right? And it doesn't hit the mark. So that's why using other sensors are helpful. Sometimes using color sensors could be useful. The thing is, they've really challenged us this year because there aren't as many black and white lines on this field as there have been in the past. And a lot of times those were great places to kind of square up. Yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting challenge because again, I have a new team, so I can't have them use any sort of experience from the past. So it's kind of brand new for me with them as well. I can't say, okay, what did we do in the past and what are we going to do this year? The other thing that's really helpful sometimes is that I see a lot of things like if you have part of your robot that has a flat side to it, a lot of teams will back up to a wall and square up that way before. So they'll go out, they'll kind of back up into a wall, and then they'll move forward. And that's just a place to center themselves back. Okay, now I'm straight. I'm not like this anymore. And so that does help. So using the field to help write yourselves, right? So sometimes if you have a funnel, for example, on your robot, as you're going into a mission, kind of hug that mission model with your funnel. And then as you're pushing into it, your robot's kind of turning and writing itself. And then from that point, you're always starting from that point in the same position. So I think sometimes that can help too. So I think those are just some of the things that we've learned over the years is how do you use the field to make sure you're in the right place, okay? Because sometimes the sensors don't function the way they need to. Or anything else? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so to kind of respond to that, it's very good. I appreciate you saying that. You have 2.5 minutes to do the robot game. Once you have solved some missions, start from the beginning and how are you going to do that? Let's time it. Practice going through it several times. Those transitions from mission to mission. Practice that. I mean, we've had teams like sometimes like a change in attachment. It might take them 15 or 20 or 30 seconds. Well, you don't have time for that kind of time to switch. So we're trying to break that into smaller periods of time. Can we do that transition in under 10 seconds? Right? Because every minute, every second that robot is in the home, the base, you're not scoring in. So the fewer transitions or the quicker transitions you can make, the better. And that takes practice as well. Practicing the script and the interaction. We have our students present to potential users all the time. As much as we can, once we have our idea, we have them take that script that they've written, even if it's a little rough, and they sit in front of parents to start off with. And maybe we pull other people from the community in to present to, or maybe we go out somewhere and do a presentation and get some feedback. The more times they have to practice what they're going to do in competition, the better. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Thank you. Yeah. My goal, we have a challenge because our school is relatively small. We have most of our classes are between 17 and 22 students. So I have fifth grade through eighth graders in our classes between 17 and 18 students, so 17 and 22 students. So that means that these are the kids that are involved in all of our sports as well, or our academic team and robotics, right? So I can't have them meet when we're supposed to be at a game or an important sports practice, whatever. So it's really interesting scheduling that. So my goal is to have the teams meet twice a week. We meet for 2 hours twice a week. Okay, so 4 hours a week is our goal. Last week, a couple teams only met once because of conflicts and schedules. I try personally to stay away from Saturdays because we have a lot of tournaments and stuff on Saturdays, and I try to stay away from Sundays. Sundays to me is kind of a family day, and I think that that's a day in my school and my situation. I don't want to have to do that. As a teacher, I do a lot of my preparations in the weekend. If I have to be there all day on Sunday, Sunday afternoon, then I literally am working 7 days a week because I have to do all my preparations on Saturday and then I'm working on Sunday. And I feel like my family needs a little time off too. So I think you just have to kind of balance that a little bit. But I try to do 4 hours a week, two practice weeks. Now, once we get closer to the qualifier, we might meet 4 times or 5 times. We might meet every day. We've done a lot of this the night before, depending on how much we have to put together. The night before the qualifier, we might have just a really long meeting time. Like we meet from after school, starting at 3. And last year when we did that, I think we went home at 9:30. It was 6 hour. 6 hour. I brought in food. Parents were really excited about helping out with that sort of thing. This team, we scored prior to that meeting. We were scoring 110 points consistently last year. If you all know anything about last year's, that was terrible. We ended up taking at the qualifier the robot game, the robot performance award. We were the highest. So that 6 hours was enough to tweak everything we needed to get to the highest in the qualifier. So sometimes great things happen at the end, sometimes they don't. But I would say 4 hours is probably what we can do. I've had some teams I know they don't meet that much, and some teams meet. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. During the day. No, that's a good question. Yeah. That's a good question. Now we with ours, I don't have to be at these other. We have three teams. I don't. I'm not always present. I always make sure I'm there when they start, and then But the thing is, every one of our volunteers at our school go through a background check. So that's part of what we've done. And actually, one of my coaches is one of our teachers' husbands. So like he's within our community, that kind of thing too. But that's definitely something I would look into is finding out like what are the acceptable procedures that the school will allow for you to do that, and maybe you need to see if you can recruit a teacher who can be the representative. Yeah, yeah, mhm. Yeah. Right. So I'm going to tell you, you're not going to get much in 1 hour. If you're going to sit down, sometimes 2 hours isn't enough with the robot. We sit down with that robot sometimes. Now, another option with that, and a lot of teams do work out of homes. Maybe you can put in your basement and you just host it at your house. You know, and if the parents want to be comfortable with that sort of thing, because I mean, it's all about safety, it's all about transparency. Have some parents come and help, or rotate through helping and being present to help that. Those are just some ideas. Are there any other questions? Yes. Um, yeah, prototype is kind of, I think it's on the rubric that they like to see a model. Um, we made a model 2 years ago that was made out of Legos. This is what it would look like. The solution was a windmill that would turn an air compressor to compress air into a tank. Then that compressed air would be used to turn a turbine to generate electricity. Right? We weren't going to be able to build that prototype, but we built what a concept with Legos, and that was cool. But then when we went to the engineers, we were able to say, but in real life, let's describe what that would be made of. And we found out that we can actually create that real thing in about a 6x6 shed. You got a 6x6 shed out in your backyard. You can put all that stuff in with one of those home windmills sitting on top of your house. And the thing is, describing that sort of thing, painting the picture. Here's the concept in Legos. Here, let's describe what it would look like in a bigger house. And I think that does give us an advantage. Have we always done that? No. Have we done better since we've done that? Yes. So I would say definitely. I don't want to give you all of the things that we do, but I do want to give you, that's something you still need to work through is what's appropriate there, right? How do you make how do you make a prototype for this year's theme? Because we have to figure out what our solutions are first, right? And maybe it's something we just describe or draw, right? Maybe the model is something we describe or draw. I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, thank you for asking that. Yeah. It's more like that. Yeah, we typically because when you have, I think our sweet spot that we find is 6 people on a team. We typically have more than that, seven, eight, nine. Once you have seven, 8, or 9 people, you're going to have kids that are not really engaged, and then when they're not engaged, they're going to be messing around, which brings those engaged kids off of what they're doing. And so, honestly, if it's just one of you present, I would get an assistant so you can be circulating. So we always try to have two. Number one, that's great for you. It's always good for adults to have two adults present because it protects us. We want to make sure everybody's always safe and protected, right? Not just the kids, but also us and our reputations as well, right? So we always make sure that we always have two adults present at all times. And so that's the first part. But then the thing is that way one of the adults could be at the table working with the kids that are assigned to the table that day or that period, and then the other one is working with the kids that are working on research and budget. So, and then after a certain period of time, we take breaks. Take breaks. Kids need brain breaks. Maybe work for half an hour, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, unless they're really working hard. Like some of my these eighth graders last year, I said, let's take a break. We have to. Like, we're getting stuff done. Okay. But then other times we're like, we start 10 minutes in. Can we take a break? Okay, we haven't even started yet. Like, right? So you got to read it, and there are going to be times that you're going to be meeting, and you're going to have it all planned out, and you're going to get nothing accomplished because they are so distractible that day. They're really tired. The weather's changing, whatever, right? And just be ready for that. That sort of thing is going to happen, and it's okay to digest things and not really get things checked off your list. That's what happens. I do, but it typically doesn't get done. Yeah, I do. I mean, last year my daughter was on our team, and I needed her to do some things, so I made her. But that's different. Unless if you have a son or a daughter on the team, and you need something to get done, and you assign it to them because specifically you can make sure that they do it over the weekend. That could be done too. So she did a lot of script writing. And I said, we need a rough draft of this. I said, you got to bring it in next time we meet. I said, done. Got to do it. I said, get on a Zoom call or a FaceTime call with one of the other people, and you got to knock it out this weekend. And they did, but usually it doesn't happen. I said, you got to research these things. I even have parents like, can you help them take care of this? And they come in, and it's like nothing. You go, okay, let's just start from the place we left off, and that's just the way it goes. All right, I am a few minutes over. I don't mind. I don't know what's next on our schedule. Do we know what's next on our schedule? Okay. So we do have a little bit of flex time. If you still have questions, I'm here to answer them. But I think our time is officially over. So I appreciate you. And I hope I helped you a little bit. So, yeah.